Hey, Sales Enablement Podcast listeners. This is Alistair Woolcock, co-host of the RevOps Podcast. We have another special episode for you coming right up. So if you like what you hear, come and subscribe and join us at the RevOps Podcast. Welcome everybody to this week's RevOps Podcast episode. I'm Alistair Woolcock, Chief Strategy Revenue Officer, joined here by my co-host, Howard Brown, founder and CEO of Revenue.io, who for over 2 decades now has been studying the science of conversations, behaviors, and connecting that back to how we actually produce revenue. And today, Howard and I are really excited to have our guest, Tim Gerardi. Tim joins us as Director of Sales Operations from Trexon. Tim, wonderful to have you with us. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks, Howard. Thanks, everyone. Thank you all for having me here. Glad to be here today.
Now, Tim, I'd love to just start off. Trexon is a company, on the move. It's making a lot of changes, out there in the world today. What's going on in the world of Trexon right now? And tell me a little bit about it.
So quite a bit. We are a very fast-growing organization. Currently, about 200 million plus in revenue, and our focus is really around creating and developing ruggedized and heavy-duty wire and cable solutions for our customers, a wide array between aerospace and defense, steel mills, wood pulp paper, medical devices. A fun fact, we have about 40 feet of wire and cable that goes up on every single SpaceX satellite.
Wow. That's amazing. And as somebody, I was fortunate just a couple of weeks ago to be at the launch of Artemis, which is the rocket that sent the Orion and is taking us back to the moon. So it sounds like you may have some connections in there as well.
A little bit with SpaceX, yes. That's actually, I wanted to go down and witness that as well. Hopefully you had a great time down there.
I did. I was front and center in Banana Creek, which is the viewing area with all the NASA folks and stuff like that, and Lockheed and others. And it was wonderful. I will say it was like being, if any of us ever seen the launch of shuttles in the IMAX theater, and you get that big thumping sound, it's that times 10. And the sheer light coming off of this was staggering. So
it is amazing. I've seen one live down at Canaveral. It's exactly as you described.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Well, listen, I'm so happy you're with us from Trexon. It is brilliant to have you. And, somebody that has spent a career, you've been in sales ops and manufacturing. I think you've done it around the tech world with some SaaS companies. You dabbled in the PE world. Today, I really want to dig into the idea of how do we repair sales ops?
Yeah.
And why now? Like what do we need to repair? So you're somebody that's living this every day, and you're in a company that's scaling and transitioning. So what are you repairing, and where are you taking it, and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really what I find as a fairly common theme, and again, this is whether it's tech, manufacturing, distribution, is folks think and drive system over process. Mm-hmm. And really it's the exact opposite of that. So what I mean is you bring in a CRM tool like Salesforce.com, for example, any CRM tool. And you think that by having the tool and the correct fields, page layouts, understanding how you're going to use it, that the tool is going to fix the underlying issue, whether it be pipeline management, forecasting, activity tracking, et cetera. But unless you have the underlying processes developed ahead of a CRM implementation, knowing how you're going to drive the system. I equate it to, you can buy a Bugatti, spend $1 million on a Bugatti, but if you don't know how to drive it, you're never going to get it out of the garage and get the full potential, right? And that's what I've seen throughout my career is you have organizations that drive pockets of sales operations. Maybe it's financial analysis. Maybe it's sales process. Maybe it's tools and systems, but they don't really bring it together. And where I come in, like what I've come in with Trexon and many other organizations before, is to pull that together, create an organization that is centered around process and then works within the system to help understand how we're going to drive the car, how we're going to get the information that we need.
Yeah, and Howard, I think what I hear Tim saying there a lot is the people aspect of process and understanding that end to end is what's going to light it up, right, with everyone.
100%. I think
Exactly.
Tim, you raised something that I've seen through my 25 years in tech. It's people think that suddenly by adding a piece of technology, they're magically going to solve not a problem, but many problems. And in many cases, I find they don't even know the problem that they're trying to solve. They've heard of a technology. It's making people better. It's helping, revenue come in more. It's helping preserve, but they don't actually look at the processes of what they're actually trying to improve. And I think it's really, really important. And you encapsulated it perfectly. What you need to understand is what is the center of this activity, of this improvement. And we talk about sales. What sales needs to do better is provide a better experience for the buyer.
Yes.
At the end of the day, we can improve all the sales processes we want, but if we don't think about the buyer and improving their process, we're really not going to deliver on that goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to that point, at Trexon today, we're kicking off customer first. And everything that I do is always working backwards from the customer. So what I mean by that is, let's take forecasting and pipeline management, for example. That has a direct correlation to impact the customer experience, because once we get that process down and we are in a smooth cadence of running the management of our pipeline, producing a forecast, especially in the manufacturing space, and I can talk to that in a minute too, if we'd like to. It becomes imperative to drive information throughout the organization. What is it that we're looking to sell and produce? From the manufacturing side, it helps get into planning. We're dealing with a lot of supply chain issues right now. And if we don't effectively plan, it affects that customer experience. It becomes a differentiator from our competition when we start doing this very well.
It reminds me of the parallel story. It's an old one as an analogy, but what innovated and created one of the greatest car companies in the world? When Henry Ford figured out how to actually in-house take the entire ecosystem of the supply chain and the manufacturing line and streamline it end to end. And what he did was he thought through, well, what are the roles that are needed to support a discrete task? So rather than everybody doing everything, it was suddenly, hey, here's a discrete task, be really good at that task. And that some of those tasks takes everything from raw metals at one end and produces a Model T out the other end, and I can revolutionize the industry.
Right.
Now, I get that it's 2022 and maybe Model T Fords, and that's not the best example in the world, but sales ops is kind of going through that renaissance of how do I think through these discrete tasks and roles, build a process around that lines up to what you and Howard are talking about, which is the buyer journey.
Yes.
Connecting to the buyer and functionally driving us there. Do you see it that way, Tim and Howard? What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I before you got on, I was reading Trexon, and there was something that really caught my attention, really resonates. It's constant innovation, continuous improvement. The challenges our customers face continue to evolve, and so do our solutions. We build and innovate for specialty applications to keep up with ever-changing demands.
Yes.
That encapsulates the exact problem that our revenue teams face today. We're talking about improving and constantly innovating, but we're not actually tooling our reps for that continuous improvement. We're throwing a phone at them. We're giving them a lot of data. We give them 17 different tools, but we're not actually helping them in the moment that matters when they're engaging with their customer. And I love that this is front and center on the website, because that's it. That's our job, is to build technology to advance, to innovate, to continuously improve.
Absolutely. And one thing that I would add to that, so, talking about the repairing work, right? Pulling everything together. And a lot of what we're driving also is sales effectiveness. So we are working to understand, and we do this very closely with our reps, to understand what are the tools that you need to be successful. What is it that you're hearing in the marketplace? Where are the gaps that we have today? And to your point, one of our main focuses in Trexon, specifically on the industrial product side, is tooling up and building up our custom assembly. How do we create more customized solutions for our customers? How do we really drive what they need in the marketplace, right? And for example, one of the things that we're doing is, as part of the overall an enhancement of our tool set, is we're bringing in CPQ. We're going to allow for our reps to do a lot more instantaneous quoting, interaction with the customers, and provide, again, that better experience, right? It's all about driving excellence with the customer and differentiating yourself from your competition. And that's what we're working to do within sales operations and ultimately with our sales teams to drive that to the end state with our customers.
Now, before we jump from that, Tim, I just want to double click because I'm notorious for using acronyms on here all the time, and it sometimes trips people up. But you just quickly glossed over what is a big part of what's going on in the industry right now, the CPQ process.
Yes.
So when people think about that, the configure, price, quoting process, right? It is how we actually take a functional thing that we're selling, and how do I provide optionality, pricing, accuracy, all the way through the entirety of the process.
Exactly.
Can you just do a bit of a double click on that from the world of Trexon? I'm very interested in how you're doing that, but what are you precisely doing there, as best you can share, that's innovative?
Absolutely. So we are from a CPQ, configure, price, quote perspective, we are completing our quote to cash process. And we are doing so by allowing our sales reps the ability to configure product live with our customers within a certain amount of constraints and variability. Also allow them to produce a direct quote right there with the customer as they're working live. So really the two fundamental components of the CPQ, the configure and the pricing, we're enabling our sales organization to drive much of that so we can be quicker to market, quicker to customer, and ultimately quicker to deliver the product and solution that our customers need day in and day out.
Yeah, I am very impressed by that. But I'm going to go old Gartner analyst on you here for a second as well. And
Sure.
And I think great, but what immediately pops to my head is awesome you're doing that. But also anytime I give more things for a rep to do at the point of engagement, at the point of there, like it's great because you can they're empowered, right? That's good. They hopefully can sell more.
Absolutely.
But they're often distracted. They're often bombarded. They're often they're searching and trying to figure stuff out, and they're not actually listening. They're not actually engaging. They're not actually selling. They're now just doing. Think about that next step. Howard, I'd love you to chime in here with Tim as well. Again, back to the seller. How do we take what CPQ is really important, but where does CPQ go to ensure the right behavior, the right conversation, the right things are happening beyond just, well, let me configure that for you right now. Is that the right price? No, let me change it. Oh, okay, good. And we're just jamming, basically fast discounting down people's throats, right?
Exactly. So what we're going to do is we are going to take it to a certain place, right? We are doing this today. So in our ecosystem, it is very commonplace with what we are going to allow the reps to do on their own. But we are going to take it to a certain place where the rep is able to very confidently, very practically take a customizable solution that they can work with. and we're going to define certain constraints that they're able to operate within. So what I mean is they may have a certain connector, a certain length of cable, right? That's the extent that we're going to give to our reps. If it's anything beyond that, we have a team that is going to be working in the back office, and they're going to be supporting our reps to deliver on the overly complex. So we're not going to drive them into insanity by all of these different options, so much variability. It's going to be very focused, and anything outside of that lane, we're going to deliver to our engineering team and sales support functions on the back end to help drive that productivity with our reps.
Hey, I'm curious. We don't have a lot of folks from manufacturing on the show that often, and I'm excited to sort of get a sense of when you think about a sales organization and a sales team, what makes great people? What makes people great in sales within manufacturing? It may be the same as in technology, but for a lot of our listeners, they may not be familiar with the manufacturing sector. What are the attributes of a great salesperson in something like manufacturing? And does it differ? Does it differ from a tech salesperson?
It really doesn't. So having the background where working manufacturing, tech, distribution, varying a wide array of different spaces, what I would say is there's very little difference in the skill sets needed, in the approach needed. The main difference is understanding that on the tech side, specifically if you're dealing with a SaaS business, let's say, for example, you don't have the issues around managing the supply chain, the delivery issues in terms of time to manufacture, a bill of materials, for example. Whereas on the manufacturing side, even distribution to a certain extent, you have those issues that you have to grapple with. So what I would say is while the skill set is the same, the nuance comes in the solution set and the offerings that you're delivering to the customer and how quickly you can deliver that to the end user.
It sounds like it's even more complex in many ways
Yes.
because you have to be up to date on whatever current events are happening, not just the products and the customers, but you really have to understand, is there a supply chain issue with a particular module or component? That's a lot of information for a rep to know. So not only do they have to be experts at their craft and what they're doing, but now they need another source of data to be able to provide just in the moment when they're connecting with their customers. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And what I'd say is that's where the back office comes into play. When you're dealing with this type of an organization, that's where strong communication from our purchasing team, from our operations team, this is where it's critical in any business, but really when you get into a manufacturing distribution business, to understand the different levers that you have, right? And to understand what is happening in each lever. For example, if we're looking at going back to a forecasting example, levers around backlog, levers around incremental book and bill business, right? Incremental shipment that is going to go out, right? All those different attributes are levers that can be pulled, and it's upon us to understand what are each of those levers, what's their capacity, what's their current state, and communicating that out to the field, right? When we do that, then our reps are empowered with the knowledge and understanding of how supply chain issues are affecting our business and can effectively communicate that out to their customers.
How do you communicate that to your reps?
That is one of the repair items that we're working on right now. So right now, I would say communication is something that is not necessarily a huge issue, mostly done through email, but we're looking at different ways of how do we communicate out? How do we push communication out to the organization? It's something that we're constantly evaluating and working on. It's something that that my team is focused on in terms of what is the best approach to get the latest information out to the organization, whether it's a supply chain issue, a change into Salesforce, whatever it might be, because we all know we get bombarded with emails.
Yep.
You are bombarded constantly with information. How do you know I need to pay attention to that as opposed to something else?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're hitting us to the point, the prioritization of the information, right?
Yep.
The readiness of the information, because we all go numb to the proverbial urgent news headline or the urgent this or that when they're just trying to sell, right? So, I would love us, when you think of that context, Tim and Howard, and we think of the data deluge the sellers are under today. And Tim, it's even higher, and sounds like in the manufacturing sector. How are we organizing that data? How are we actually then presenting that in a way that makes it usable to what we started, which is supporting the seller to align to the buyer based on where they are?
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, I'm going to pause us though, because we are out of time for today. So Tim, I'd love to have you back and dive into that data discussion, presentation discussion, and we'll go forwards from there and see exactly how that works inside the manufacturing world. So I think that would be really interesting for our listeners to understand.
Absolutely.
But it's been wonderful to have you on today.
Been a pleasure, and definitely like to continue the conversation with you guys. This has been great.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Howard. Thanks, everyone, for listening in. And please, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the RevOps Podcast. Also use our dial-in number to leave your questions, and Howard and I will do our best always to answer those live on the air as well. You can reach us at 323-540-4777. That's 323-540-4777. And we will see you next time where we have Tim back. Thanks so much, everyone.